Ferrari has endured a difficult spell during the Melbourne GP, but the Maranello-based squad has no time to dwell on their mistakes. We are headed to Shanghai, and they already have the first upgrade of the season ready for the sprint weekend, and Mercedes might be in a bit more trouble than they would like. Will this upgrade, one that we saw during preseason testing in Bahrain, actually work? And more importantly, what's Wolff's verdict on it? There is no doubt about the question marks that the Melbourne GP left hanging over our heads when it comes to Ferrari's performance. While the biggest improvement needs to be made behind the pit wall and in the decision-making process, we've seen that the explosive start of Leclerc should be a great advantage in the early stages of the race, but you also need to keep that lead by having an overall greater performing car than Mercedes. And Ferrari is already making the first step towards that direction by introducing the three components of the Macarena rear wing, as Fred Vasseur called them. The Frenchman stated that upgrades are coming in Shanghai, even though it's a sprint weekend, and the team will only have one free practice session to test out the performance of the upgrades. This means one thing: they are more or less certain that the upgrade will work and will bring them a good amount of performance, even though it won't be brought fully. The rear wing of the Ferrari, initially seen in Bahrain, created a lot of controversy, primarily because of its rotating nature. The fact that it can rotate for 270 degrees means a significant reduction in drag on the straights, which, combined with the aerodynamic lift created, induces a stronger diffuser stall. The first rumors were that this gives around a 5 to 8 km/h advantage on the straights, and that can be a massive booster for the 1.2 kilometer long straight in China between turn 13 and turn 14. And you can say clearly that Ferrari doesn't plan on wasting any more time when it comes to catching up with Mercedes. Unlike the previous seasons where we were used to seeing Ferrari gather data and dwell on it too long, now the team is bringing decisions on the table knowing that there is no time to waste and that Mercedes can only get better from this point on. That's why Fred Vasseur called the upcoming weekend critical for their development path, fully understanding its sprint nature and how it can compromise the team's ability to gather information. Elaborating further on this, he said, "China will be a completely different story compared to Melbourne. In terms of energy deployment, it's almost the opposite of Australia. Conditions will probably be much colder in China, and we'll have the sprint format. It means much less time to adapt the strategy. It will be a completely different exercise." And the sole reason why Mercedes should be worried is the battery deployment. This is an area in which their cars excelled in Melbourne, but might not have the luxury to do the same in Shanghai. There is just one long straight between turns 13 and 14, but other than that, the circuit is full of tight corners and long braking zones, which will help charge the battery much faster. And with a proper battery charge as well as cornering speed, Ferrari could get way ahead of Mercedes in China. Let's not forget the fact that if the rumors about their rear wing are to be believed, then the straight line advantage that Mercedes has could be non-existent. On the other side, Toto Wolff understands the threat that's coming from Ferrari in the upcoming weekend, and I don't think you could blame him. When talking about the championship so far, he acknowledged the fact that his team is back on track, but Ferrari is close and needs to be monitored. As he elaborated, "There's so much contentment that I feel in the team at the moment. We've had such a winning streak with these 8 championships and then very difficult years. You know, we still won races and finished second in the championship, but a solid 1-2 where you feel a season ahead that means you can fight for a world championship. That wasn't for a long time. Most of all, there's been a certain degree of contentment that Mercedes is back." When it comes to Ferrari, I knew before the race people were saying you're going to disappear in the distance looking at your long runs, and that was not the case. We knew that they were strong on the start, and that's what happened. So for me, the prevailing feeling is now we have a fight on our hands with Ferrari. Experience comes in very handy here as well. While Toto Wolff might have the upper hand compared to Ferrari in terms of the car's performance, I wouldn't call it a day so quickly. Leclerc and especially Hamilton are much more experienced than Mercedes' duo. And while most of the performance now relies on the car rather than the driver, the skills of the individual matter a lot. Lando Norris's verdict on Ferrari is also something that Mercedes needs to think about ahead of the 2026 season. The SF26 is a car that has a great cornering speed and acceleration out of the corners, so the high downforce circuit should be dominated by them if we're to believe the first impression. Talking about this, Norris said, "I think Ferrari, from what we see quite clearly, has the best car. Their cornering speeds are unbelievable. For us to match, that is zero chance at the minute, and we have to work very hard to understand things and learn as much as we can from this part of the season, because this part of the season now sets up the rest of it." This is definitely why Vassar's team wants to push forward with the upgrades. There is no time to be wasted, and if you want to catch up with Mercedes, you need to act on it swiftly. However, the Maranello-based squad might have hoped that the difference in performance compared to them and Mercedes would be bigger than 2%. Because if this scenario were to become a reality, then every team on the grid would be able to bring upgrades to specific races thanks to the ADUO, or the additional development and upgrade opportunities is the worst nightmare for Mercedes right now, because if it does, then their rivals can bring one update after races 6, 12, and 18 if the deficit is 2%. If it's greater than 4%, then every team can bring 2 updates, and you can see where the worries of Mercedes are stemming from. However, if they play the dummy here and deliberately slow the car to perform worse, they are putting themselves in a very vulnerable situation. A performance that's better for less than 2% isn't that convincing, and it's slowing you down from the process of gathering data and valuable information. You know for a fact, every other team will try to exploit as much as they can from this new era of cars, and they aren't going away anytime soon, with the next shakeup being set for 2030. If the rear wing of the SF26 turns out to be a jackpot, and there are high chances of this happening considering that other teams are ready to copy the design, and Mercedes slows the car in order to make themselves fall out of the ADUO rules, then we have a fierce championship battle on our hands. And there are already beliefs among the F1 pundits when it comes to Mercedes speed in Melbourne. Ted Kravitz, for one, doesn't think that the Silver Arrows have gone full throttle in Australia. Adding his verdict on the performance of the W16, Kravitz said, "The thing that we all thought was going to happen happened, which is that it was a Mercedes 1-2. They didn't run away with it. Maybe they had their engine turned down. I'm not quite sure. We haven't seen their full performance quite yet. Handed an easier run by Ferrari, I think it's fair to say. Again, a massive improvement needs to be made behind the Ferrari's pit wall, because this is a team that paid a hefty price for wrong decisions in the past. If they are going to recover performance on the car on track and in the wind tunnels, then they definitely need to focus on the personnel as well, now that there is a genuine opportunity that this championship is going to turn into a 2-team fight up front. With all this in mind, do you think that Ferrari can catch up to Mercedes and gather the maximum number of points in China, considering it's a sprint weekend with their newest upgrade? And more importantly, do you think that they're rushing the upgrades a little bit and could be poised for a setback? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to click on the video that appears on